Hello, Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. I'm your host, Julian, and today we're going to be talking about the Toronto Raptors Cup game against the New York Knicks. But before we do that, I want to do two things. I want to talk about the newest trade buzz that has surrounded the Toronto Raptors, and that is Shams Charania, the NBA rumor monger, who's pretty trustworthy and has sources within the NBA linking the Toronto Raptors to NBA superstar, maybe former superstar Anthony Davis from the Dallas Mavericks. So I do want to get into that and give you my thoughts on what I think about a potential trade with the Dallas Mavericks. But the other thing I want to talk about is my diagnosis of the season so far. And I think that this is a good place to start on because, as you probably know, if you've been following this channel, I have been sick with the flu for like 6 days. God, it has been horrible. I think Quickly has it, which is why he missed last night's game. It sucks. So if it's still available, maybe get the flu shot because Jesus, it is so bad this year. But in any case, I made a post last night after the Cup game where I kind of gave my diagnosis of the season so far. And it got a little bit of traction. People retweeted it and liked it. And I'll show it to you right now. And I'm going to kind of break down point by point what my ideas are. So first of all, number one, they weren't as good as their record earlier in the season indicated. Number two, they don't have a lot of scoring depth, which meant that RJ Barrett going down hurt them more than maybe it would another team. Number three, Jakob Poeltl's back is still obviously injured, and they have no other true center on the roster. Number four, all three of the reserve wings that were expected to, push for rotation spots in the lineup have either underwhelmed or have completely busted. So let's get into these and break them down point by point. So number one, they're simply just not as good as their earlier record this season indicated, even accounting for RJ Barrett. So earlier on in the season, they were, they started off poorly. They went 1-4 to start the season. Then they went on a big run. Like they won 13 of 14 games, and they ended up with a record of 14-5. And that was like really good. Number 2 in the Eastern Conference. Their point differential was amazing, all of that stuff. And things were looking very good. Unfortunately, a lot of those wins came against teams that were either missing significant numbers of starters, like some of the good teams, like the Cavaliers. Some of those, like a lot of them, came against some of the cellar dwellers in the Eastern Conference, of which there are many this season. There are 3 at the bottom of the Eastern Conference that are just really bad, and the Raptors played them quite a few times. Now, I don't think everything was fake. Like, I don't think the Raptors were just total frauds during that stretch. But I just don't think that they were 14-5 good. So if you set your expectations to that level, I think that you were just setting yourself up for disappointment. And during that stretch, I was saying, like, I don't know how good this team is yet. I would like to see them play against some of the other middling teams in the Eastern Conference. Like I said, I wanted to see them play against the Celtics. I wanted to see them play against the Heat. I wanted to see them play against the Magic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I could get a better understanding of what the team kind of was like in reality. And a lot of those teams the Raptors still haven't played, but you get the idea. I just don't think that the Toronto Raptors were 14-5 good. So them, falling to 15-11, it's not exactly a massive disaster, but it's obviously not as good as you would hope. Let's move to point number 2. So the Toronto Raptors are lacking in scoring depth. And so RJ Barrett going down has hurt them more than it would kind of a similarly skilled team, but with maybe a different roster distribution. So as the saying goes, like when one guy goes down, another guy steps up. And when RJ went down, the players that they had to come in and fill his position were different players. The player who has come in, he didn't start last night, but he is a guy that has started many times when RJ was out, was Jacoby Walter. And now Jacoby Walter wasn't, horrible in those games, but he is a completely different type of player. He's not a scorer. And RJ Barrett, that is pretty much what he does. That's his biggest skill, is that he is a player who can put points on the board for you. Just from a, 10,000 foot view, what does he do? He scores the basketball. And he's not the perfect player. I don't think that should be the takeaway here. He's not a guy that is going to turn any team into a winner. but he is a good player, and he delivered something for the team that in retrospect they were really going to miss. So they don't really have anybody on the roster, especially at the guard spot, who can come in and just kind of consistently score. A lot of other teams have like a sixth man type, like a guy who is generally just a point scorer, a bucket getter. The Raptors don't have that. They've got Jamal Shed, who is a good backup point guard, in my opinion. They've got a bunch of other players who, theoretically should fit that mold, but just haven't been producing. We'll get to that in a bit. And then they have other players who are kind of more role players than stars. So that has been a big issue. So what that means is that the team stars, the scoring burden is more on them. So Brandon Ingram, for example, we've gone into depth about how he has had to shoulder more of the scoring load and how other teams are able to key into him more, and how that has hurt the Raptors offense, how Scotty Barnes maybe has a little less space to work with. It has basically had a trickle-down effect that has been very negative for the Toronto Raptors offense. And this is an important point to make because I think a lot of people would say like, oh, they're missing RJ Barrett. I mean, especially a person who's not a Raptors fan. If you were to tell them, well, the Raptors have lost a bunch of games, they don't look as good because RJ Barrett is missing, they'd be like, yeah, whatever. It's just RJ Barrett. Like, give me a break. The guy isn't even that good. But number one, I think that they're underrating him. And number two, I think that he sort of underscores a key weakness with the Toronto Raptors. So important to point that out. Number three, Jakob Poeltl's back is still hurt. I think that's pretty obvious. And they have no other true center on the roster. So I've said in the past that, and I've said it consistently, that I don't mind the small lineups that the Raptors run off of the bench as long as they don't have to play them the full game. But you can't run it the whole game. We've seen what it looks like so many times. You just get out rebounded. Scoring chances inside are way too easy for the other team. It is exhausting. Players have to play really hard, especially with a switching defense that you have to play because there's nobody to protect the basket. It's just a really rough system to run. It takes a toll on the players, and especially against teams that have those big bruising centers. So Jakob Poeltl's back injury has hurt this team quite a bit in a similar way to how RJ Barrett, they don't have a guy who can step into his shoes. They don't have a guy who can really step into Jakob Poeltl's shoes, and that's really hurt them. And Jakob Poeltl, he often starts out a game playing okay. Last night he came out playing quite well. And then the shoe drops and his movement just kind of slows down and he's not moving his feet very well and he's just looking kind of slow. And I mean, I watched him last season. He was the Toronto Raptors' most consistent player last season, easily. He had a career year in many different categories. And if the Raptors were getting that Jakob Poeltl, I think they would be way better this season. I think that they would be they would have won a bunch of the games that they lost this season, especially the ones where he wasn't playing, if he was healthy. So yeah, it is a big issue for the Toronto Raptors. He's just not moving in the same way that he did last season, and he's not playing in back-to-backs. There is a bit of light at the end of the tunnel here. The Raptors have a big break due to the NBA Cup. The schedule has been compressed, and now it's going to be decompressed. So now the Toronto Raptors have one game in 8 days. So they will be playing the Miami Heat on Monday, this next Monday, and then, no games other than that. So hopefully Jakob Poeltl's back can get some rest and he can go back to looking the way he did last season. Number four, and this I think is kind of the most impactful one, the one that has the most long-term implications, is that all three of the reserve wings, so those guys are Ochai Agbaji, Grady Dick, and Jacoby Walter, have either underwhelmed or completely busted. So before the season started, I was expecting one of Jacoby Walter, Grady Dick, or Ochai Agbaji to step up and become a rotation player, just solidify themselves as a solid rotation player who could help the Toronto Raptors win games this season. And that has just not happened. Ochai's shot has disappeared, and he is playing a little bit better these days, and he is a good defender, But yeah, his shot has completely vanished. Jacoby Walter, he had a good game last night, and he has been shooting the ball pretty well this season, but he can't finish inside. Like his finishing ability, his dribbling ability, those are big question marks right now. His size on defense, like his weight is an issue, and his consistency is just not there yet. Although, I'm not giving up on him, but he hasn't been consistent enough to become like a quality rotation player. And then I just think Grady is like a bust. Unfortunately, I could break it down in many different ways, but he was a shooting specialist. That's what he was drafted for. I think that's what most people expected him to be able to do in the league. Right now, he's only shooting 31% from three. He's almost not even sometimes he feels too shy shooting the ball. He has really big issues with movement in his shot, which I've explained. The complexity of his shot motion, that has been like one of the things that people have mentioned as a culprit in the fact that he can't consistently make those shots. I've said that maybe it's his touch. I'm kind of, it's year 3. The rubber is meeting the road here, and he has not been consistent enough. And I'm just kind of almost ready to call it a day. But not hitting on any 3 of those players, and all 3 of them either being sort of inconsistent or just not good enough, has been a huge issue for the Toronto Raptors, especially when it comes to depth, especially when it comes to bench scoring. So when I was talking about RJ Barrett going down, the guy that you would hope that would be able to step up and provide some of the scoring would be Grady Dick, because, he can theoretically be able to shoot the ball, which is something the Raptors could use. And then his cuts going to the rim, or his cuts or his drives off of closeouts could really help the Toronto Raptors. Unfortunately, he just has not been up to snuff. In any case, those are the 4 points for the diagnosis, in a nutshell this season. And I think it's a good way to sort of summarize how I felt about the past couple of games, because as you know, I haven't made many episodes recently due to the flu. Next, let's get to the fun stuff. So the Anthony Davis rumors that have been bubbling up. Shams Charania, one of the kind of the only remaining NBA insider with the goods. So when he reports on something, you can be pretty much rest assured that it is coming from somebody that is a real source within the NBA. And he has basically said that the Toronto Raptors are interested in trading for Anthony Davis. So the Mavs are off to a bad start this season. And while it's gotten a bit better lately, they've actually looked pretty good and they've hit a little bit of a softer part of their schedule, they're probably still back in the lottery this season. And I won't rehash the entire Luka trade thing, but Anthony Davis was the guy that they got back for Luka, and he was kind of the prized possession. But he's just not really a fit with Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg is kind of a power forward style player, and Anthony Davis is also a power forward style player, but more importantly, they're at different ends of their career. Anthony Davis is a guy who is a win now player, and Cooper Flagg is a guy that's going to need more seasoning before he becomes, a top-notch NBA superstar. And so they're probably going to be looking to trade Anthony Davis this season. And that makes sense. You want to get a guy who's going to fit next to Cooper Flagg moving forward. So Anthony Davis, when he's healthy, is one of the best defenders in the entire league. He's very large, he's athletic, super broad shoulders, strong, smart, long arms. He can cover a lot of ground, protect the basket. He's a good rebounder. He's a really good interior scorer. He has a mid-range game. He's a good playmaker. You can run the pick and roll with him. He is a top 20 player when he's healthy. And if he's healthy, and the team is healthy, and depending on what you give up for him, he would probably make the Toronto Raptors a contender in the Eastern Conference. That is not a huge stretch to imagine. I think that the Toronto Raptors have been good this season, and adding a player of Anthony Davis's caliber would, make them at least a favorite to get out of the first round, and then would probably challenge other teams probably the Knicks in the second round, because he is an extremely impactful player. Now let's talk about the downsides. So number 1, he is 32 years old. That is right on the cusp of when players begin their downward trajectory. 32, 33, 34. That is when you see the slow decline from a player who was a superstar to a player who probably becomes more of a role player to a player who becomes just an old vet. Okay. And to compound that, he has only played about half of his regular season games the past 7 seasons. And that's obviously not good. He's already missed time this season. He's only played 10 games this season. He's healthy now, but, can that last? And he also doesn't like playing center. And that could be an issue, especially when you consider what the Raptors would probably be likely to give up for him. He's also on the hook for $60 million for each of the next 2 seasons. And to compound that, the last season is a player option. So if you are hoping that he sticks around, like maybe he gets a long string of being healthy and he's like, hey, I can go and get one last big contract on the market, then, you might lose him for that last season and you were expecting to keep him. Or let's say he is injured the whole time. And he's like, $60 million in my last season here, that's probably about as much as I would make if I went out and signed a new contract, like all in. Like maybe I'd only get $60 million over the course of this deal. So he might just opt in that case. So it's kind of like the worst of both worlds with that player option. So that's not good. And let me put it this way. I am interested in Anthony Davis. Okay. I think that if they got him this season, they would be a good team. If he was like a really good team, I think that he can catapult a team that is good into great. Like he is that good, depending on his health. But I'd only be interested in Anthony Davis if it was a buy low deal that didn't involve a ton of future assets moving out. And that might just not be feasible. Maybe there's another team that is like willing to move heaven and earth to get him because they feel like they are ready to just take that step and become a contender. But if other teams get too shy, then maybe the Raptors can come in kind of in a similar way to how they got Brandon Ingram and give a low bid and, get the house on a really kind of low ball offer. And the Mavs just say like, listen, we just need to cash in now so that we're not faced with this problem of Anthony Davis being on our books for the next 2 seasons and not getting anything out of him. So here's what I would consider. And you can let me know if you think it's too much or too little. But what I would say, the amount that I would be willing to give up for him is RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, Grady Dick, Garrett Temple, and this year's first round pick. And that is light, okay? Don't get me wrong. Anthony Davis is a future Hall of Famer, and he's at the tail end of his prime, but is still like an enormously impactful player when healthy. So it is light. And Jakob Poeltl, that deal is kind of looking pretty nasty right now, especially with his health concerns. So it's not necessarily something that they'd be like super interested in. But at the same time, like I don't want to bet the farm on 2 injury-prone players. I can deal with one. Brandon Ingram, I mean, over the course of his deal, if some of the seasons he's not playing a ton of the games, like I think you can survive. If you have 2 players that are going to miss significant portions of the season or they can't play with one another, like we just saw that with the Pelicans, Zion and Brandon Ingram. There's a famous example with Yao and Tracy McGrady where like they were just constantly missing each other's windows. Like when one went down, the other one was healthy. When the other one was healthy, the other one was down. And that sort of combination, which looked like it could have won a championship, never managed to get one. And so that's what I would be willing to give up. And you might, the only thing that you could consider here is like, why RJ and not Emmanuel Quickley? So Emmanuel Quickley is like paid more, and a lot of people see him as a worse contract. I don't know if I totally agree with that, but the reason that I think that if you were to make this trade, you would give up RJ Barrett is because Emmanuel Quickley is a pick and roll guard, and you would really want to keep a pick and roll guard on the team if you're trading for Anthony Davis. I mean, that just makes sense. Anthony Davis is one of the best pick and roll bigs in the entire league. And if you paired him with RJ Barrett, it's not going to work as well because he doesn't have the pull-up 3 that Emmanuel Quickley does. We've seen what Emmanuel Quickley can do with a competent screener. He is a deadly shooter, and you would really need that kind of player to play alongside an elite screen setter like Anthony Davis. It just makes more sense. So that's what I would think. Let me know in the comments whether you agree with this. Am I too much of a homer? Is this like way too unrealistic? Or is this just like, what are you thinking? Like trading for Anthony Davis is completely the wrong approach. Like, I'd understand both of those. So let me know. We are going to get into the player evaluations. And so I'm going to tell you a new thing that I'm going to be doing, which is what I call player highlights. And instead of player evaluations, I'm going to be doing player highlights. And I'm going to be highlighting 3 or 4 players, sometimes maybe more, sometimes maybe less, that I think stood out in a good or bad way the game that I'm talking about, instead of drilling down on every single player. I don't think that that is a good use of my time or yours. I think that this is a better way of doing things. Let me know. If you don't like it, maybe I'll change it back, but that's what I'm thinking moving forward. So we'll start off this one with, I think, the player of the game. I mean, pretty obviously the player of the game, Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram had a pretty fantastic game last night against the New York Knicks, especially in the first half, especially in the first quarter. He was electric scoring the ball. The Toronto Raptors were beating the New York Knicks in the first quarter. They scored 39 points. A lot of that was due to Brandon Ingram. He scored 17 points in the first quarter on 6 of 7 shooting. His shot was going. He was like, his 3-point shot has come back around. He shot 3 of 5 from 3. He had 31 points on 61% shooting, 60% from 3, 6 of 8 from the free throw line with 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Wow, that's a lot of sixes. Spooky. 2 steals, 0 blocks, and 3 turnovers. I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was really good. He had a couple of good defensive possessions as well. Like, he rotated onto the perimeter, showed some foot speed. I thought he looked really good. He stepped up big, and this was a game where you were hoping that a bunch of players would step up big, but he definitely did that. And yeah, it was a shame that they weren't able to pay off that type of performance from Brandon Ingram. And he has struggled recently, not his past 2 games, but the games prior to that, he was really struggling. So it's good to see him come back around. And I think a lot of people were getting nervous, like, oh, is this all just like, did they make a mistake trading for this guy? Is he actually all that good? I saw people mentioning that he's like Rudy Gay. I don't think that's a good comparison. But he's looking good. And I think he is a good player. And all the things that I said about him prior to the season, I still believe. I think that he is a quality star player in the NBA. And I'm glad that the Toronto Raptors made the deal to get him. He had a really good game last night. Another standout performance was Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead had a really good night last night on the offensive end, I'll say. So on the offensive end, he had 18 points on 15 shots. He was 4 of 11 from 3. He was 2 of 4 from the free throw line with 3 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 steal, and only 1 turnover. And while obviously, 4 of 11 is okay, that's not bad from 3. He did get a little shot happy at the end of the game, and that was okay. They were looking for something, and he was trying to deliver, and he hit enough threes that I didn't feel like he was jacking the shots up. The shots needed to come from somewhere, and he was kind of feeling it that night, so no problem there. But he is a good playmaker. He really stepped into the role that I think a lot of people were hoping that he would be able to replicate with Emmanuel Quickley. And he had a better night than, he usually does from a scoring perspective. That is his weakness as a player, in my opinion. I think he's a really disruptive defender. He's really good at drawing offensive fouls. He is an excellent playmaker. Like, he can really read a game extremely well and set up other teammates. And then he usually is not a very good scorer. And last night he was. He was one of the best scorers on the team. So I really liked what he brought to the table. On defense, it was not great. As I've mentioned in the past, he's a smaller player. And Jalen Brunson, that is a guy that you need to put more size on. And Darko mentioned this himself after the second half. Like, they asked Ivo Simovic, and he said basically that they were going to put more size on Brunson. And that was really it, because Jalen Brunson, if you're too small, he just shoots over you. Like, he's so crafty, he can generate enough space that if he gets a little bit of daylight, he'll be able to bang the shot. And I think that Jamal Shead, like, it wasn't all him. Like, Chucky Hepburn did a poor job guarding Jalen Brunson. And Jamal Shead, like, there was one shot, like, Jalen Brunson's a very shameless flopper, And he's obviously a great player. I mean, like, they're not taking anything away from him as a player, but he's a foul baiter. And he had this horrible, 3-point shooting foul where he just completely made up the foul. But everything else, like, the guy was shooting open jump shots. And Jamal Shed is just not big enough to bother the shot. While he can get around the screens well enough, that's like one of the things that he's good at, he can't get the length to bother the shot. So, not a great night on the defensive end, although I think that this is kind of a special circumstance. He's not going to run into Jalen Brunson every night, so it's not like he's like just a bad defender or something like that. And I think you should be able to get defense from your other positions. You shouldn't necessarily have to lean on your point guard to pick up the point of attack. Sometimes you can get that from somebody else, and they did after that with Ochai Agbaji. But yeah, it was a good game from Jamal Shed, and he really showed me something, especially with the scoring. Another standout performance, I thought he was really good. Even though there were some mistakes, even though he wasn't perfect, I thought Colin Murray-Boyles had a good game. I thought he had a really good game. So he had 6 points on 3 of 6 shooting. He didn't shoot any threes. He was 0 of 2 from the free throw line with 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 1 block. And you would think like, oh, well, who cares? That's not a great stat line in 20 minutes. He was the only positive player on the Toronto Raptors with a plus 13 in this game. And while a lot of the time that's statistical noise, like it's just based on who you're playing with, etc., he like plus 13 is very big. Okay, so something's kind of happening there. And also, it looked really good. Like, he was doing a lot of really smart, good stuff, especially the offensive rebounding. He got 4 offensive rebounds in this game. He was making an impact on the defensive end. He was dunking the ball. He was moving without the ball well. He was setting good screens. I just thought it was a really good role player performance, and I'd like to see him put into the game a little bit sooner. I know they're trying to figure things out, and they're missing guys at the wing spot, so it's not as easy to find him minutes as it would be for another wing. But, I want to see our rookie, the Toronto Raptors rookie, getting a bit more burn. But I thought it was a good performance from him. The guy gets a ton of deflections. He moves his feet really well. He's in the right place most of the time. He is like a sneaky good basketball player when you're paying attention to him. You just have to watch him do his thing on the court. You'd be like, okay, this guy has a great motor, great understanding of the game, and I think he's just going to keep getting better, especially if you give him minutes. So hopefully they do. Plus 13. There we go. And last here, we'll go, it's like a low light, because this really stood out to me, and it was kind of baffling decision-making by Darko. Was Grady Dick. Grady Dick had another really disappointing night. He had 0 points in 7.5 minutes. He was 0 of 3 from the field, 0 of 1 from 3, 1 rebound, 2 turnovers, and was a negative 11 in those 7.5 minutes. This was a game that was supposed to be high stakes. This was one where it really mattered, if you want to advance and you can win a prize. And people care about it now, and people are watching. This was a nationally televised game. You're expected to play a solid rotation of players who can contribute. And I just don't see that with Grady Dick right now. It's year 3, and he's giving these kind of very anemic performances. And it's just not consistent enough. And in the first half, he showed he didn't have it. It was not his night. His defense was poor. And the thing is that they really kicked butt in the first quarter. They were winning the game. The bench came on with Grady Dick. They put him in the game, and they lost the lead. And he was bad. And then in the second half, I mean, the game prior to this one, they did not go back to Grady Dick when that happened. So basically, carbon copy of this game. Grady Dick came in, showed he didn't have it in the first half. Second half, Darko was like, okay, I'm not putting you back in. They put in Elijah Martin. They went on a big run, came back, and, almost won the game against the Celtics. In this game, it was totally different. They brought him back in again, and then they lost those minutes again. So I'm just kind of getting tired of it. I just don't want to see it anymore. Like, maybe he becomes a good player. Maybe if the Toronto Raptors trade him, or, maybe if they give him another chance and he proves me wrong, fine. That's fine. I don't mind being wrong. I don't like giving up on players, but I'm just not really into watching him anymore. I just don't really think that he has what it takes. I just put the chances of him being an NBA caliber rotation player a lot lower than I did in the past. And that's just how it is in the NBA. You prove that you've got it, or you prove that you don't. And every game moving forward increases the sample size. So yeah, it is what it is, and he's the final player on this list. In any case, let's talk about the game, the final thoughts here. Yeah, loved the first quarter. I thought that they came out with a lot of energy. I thought that that was what I wanted to see. You know, after the game prior to that against the Celtics, I didn't cover that game because I was sick, but they sucked in the first half, like thoroughly. They just got the doors blown off in the first half, and then they had to, you know, try and recover that in the second half. This was different. They came out with energy, vim, vigor. The crowd was into it. They were loving it. It was a back and forth game, really exciting. Brandon Ingram versus Jalen Brunson. Really loved seeing that. Unfortunately, as I said, the bench came in, and then in the second quarter, they just got absolutely bushwhacked. Like, they got completely destroyed. And part of that was the bench, but then when the starters came back in, they kind of lost their mojo, and it was over. The Knicks are a good team. They just are. They've got good role players. They've got shooters. They've got stars at different positions. They've got front court players, back court players. They've got a superstar in Jalen Brunson. They've got a good system, good defense, good offense. They're a good team. And the Toronto Raptors aren't at that level right now, and they are missing key players. So this wasn't an unexpected result, but I'm still disappointed. And I'm not going to lay this at the feet of any one person or player, but I think that there are like a couple of guys that I think I need to see less of, and a couple of guys I would like to see more of. Like, I would like to see, like, Elijah Martin has really been showing off in the G League, and I don't expect him to be like a world beater or anything, but I'd like to see what he has. Let's start exploring options that aren't maybe the usual suspects. And yeah, with that, the Toronto Raptors were eliminated from NBA Cup contention. And so were the Heat. They lost 2. And they will be playing the Miami Heat on Monday at 7:30. And as I mentioned before, like, I'm interested in seeing that game because the Heat have kind of been on a similar trajectory as the Raptors. They started off hot. They were looking really good point differential. Like, they've got some quality players at different positions, but they've cooled off quite a bit. And they'd be a good measuring stick to see where the Toronto Raptors are at. And that will be in Miami. So yeah, I want to see that one. I want to see how the Raptors compare. I don't exactly know who's going to win that one. I think it's probably a little favored towards the Heat because it's a home game for them, but they're 14-11. The Toronto Raptors are 15-11, so they're pretty much tied. And the Raptors could go down quite a bit this one. Right now, they're 5th. So you go from being in the playoffs all the way down to the play-in tournament. Not exactly where you want to be. So I'm interested in watching that one, and when that comes back, I'll have another episode for you. In any case, that is the episode, and I hope you enjoyed watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Really helps the channel grow, lets the algorithm know that this is content that other Raptors fans would like to watch. And also, join the Discord. We have a lot of Raptors fans in there discussing the Raptors, the NBA, all sorts of stuff. We'd love to have you in there and join us. Leave a link in the description. You can find it there. And also, join us tonight for a podcast. Me and Steve, aka Raptors Shack, will be breaking down everything about the Toronto Raptors, giving out our report cards, all of that good stuff. So join us there. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.